Well, hello. Welcome to Mark's Gospel themes from Mark's Gospel. This one, we're going to look at a story that Jesus told. So I hope you like it. I do. I want to do this story because it's one of his really well-known, Jesus' really well-known stories. But because it's really well-known, it's rarely looked at. You do it in Sunday school, if you go to Sunday school, and then you never hear of it again. Because everyone thinks, well, it's too easy, it's too self-explanatory, it doesn't really matter, everyone knows that one. So I want to look at it just briefly. So here we go. The reading is from Mark, chapter 4, from verse 1. Jesus began to teach again by Lake Galilee. The crowd that gathered round him was so large that he got into a boat and sat in it. The boat was out in the water, and the crowd stood on the shore at the water's edge. He used parables to teach them many things, saying to them, "Listen, once there was a person who went out to sow corn, and as they scattered the seed in the field, some of it fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some of it fell on rocky ground, where there was little soil. The seed soon sprouted because the soil wasn't deep, and then the sun came up, and it burnt the young plants. And because the roots hadn't grown deep enough, the plants soon dried up. Some of the seed fell among thorn bushes which grew up and choked the plants, and they didn't produce any corn. But some seeds fell in good soil, and the plants sprouted and grew and produced corn. Some had 30 grains, others 60, and others 100. And Jesus concluded, 'Listen then, if you have ears.' When Jesus was alone, some of those who'd heard him came to him with the 12 disciples and asked him to explain the parables. 'You've been given the secret of the kingdom of God,' Jesus answered. 'But the others who are on the outside hear all things by means of parables, so that they may look and not see. They may listen and listen and yet not understand. For if they did, they would turn to God and he would forgive them.'" So why did Jesus tell stories? It's because they get through your defences, don't they? They fire you up. They're irrational. They mean more than the words that are spoken, and they contain more than bare facts. One of the things I've ended up doing is I go over to one of the local schools and I tell stories. And part of me goes, well, why don't you tell Jesus stories all the time? And I do tell some Jesus stories. But I tell all kinds of stories. So today, for instance, I told an Indian story about Manu and Matsya. And basically, it's the story of the flood. This person is given or told to look after all the animals because there's a flood coming. And he's shown to show kindness. It's a great story. And it contains truth. And you think, well, why didn't you tell them the Noah story? Well, I have no doubt they will hear the Noah story. But the story, and I think the fact that many cultures have that story, shows that there's something going on here that gets past our rational consideration. And Jesus knew this, so Jesus told stories. And because you remember story, I could say to you, well, you must do this and you must do that. And you go, yeah, all right, Neil, whatever. And then you carry on. I tell you a story, right? And a bit later on, you remember the story. And then you ponder the story. And the story sinks in a bit. And it starts to change your very soul. This is why I think it's important what we watch and what we read. Because we are absorbing this stuff into our psyche, into our soul. And it changes us. Because people think I'm a wuss because I don't like scary films, and I don't like them. I don't like what they do to me. And I'm not, I think people are different, aren't they? So different stories appeal. But I think be careful. Know what's going on. Anyway, I love the way Jesus wove a story. I love the way he wove a picture of the kingdom and of hope and of love. He told stories of wheat growing in the field, of people making bread, of enemies sabotaging gardens, of seeds growing, of pearls hidden away under the ocean, of seeds growing in the darkness of the earth, of children playing in the market, of forgiving friends and of generous foreigners and of misbehaving vicars. He told all kinds of stories. And there's a rich seam in those stories of truth and what's important. And it doesn't matter what you believe or what your culture is or even what your faith is, because there's truths of God in these stories that cuts beyond all that. And as Jesus said in this reading, it's up to you whether you want to hear it or not. You might just want to hear a nice story about a big banquet and then go home. But it sneaks in through your defences. Now, one of the things we do at Chelmsford Wood here is we renew our promises to God every year, unless there's a pandemic going on. And in those, we promise again to serve God, to follow Jesus, to serve one another, our sisters and brothers here. So what now? Why have I just brought that up? We've talked about stories. Well, listen to the story we just heard. Because you've heard and said the words, if you're part of the church family, of promise that we make. So what happens now in our faith? Will those words of commitment just blow away in the breeze, not even taking root? Will the enemy take this new life, this potential? I promise I'm going to serve Jesus as best I can. Before anything even happens, will that just be gone, leaving us lifeless as a disciple, like seeds on a tarmac road? Or will the seeds, those promises, sink in a bit? We'll be delighted and excited, and we love being part of the church family, but we don't want it to get too close. We've got to keep a barrier between that and the rest of our lives. Don't get too involved. Don't give too much away. Don't let it actually cost anything. And then when life gets difficult, in our own lives or in the church, perhaps someone is ill, perhaps someone in the church annoys us or doesn't do what we thought they should do. Well, then we can walk. We can leave, because it doesn't really matter. We're not that attached, and it doesn't cost us anything whether we stay or go. Or does following Jesus, being part of a church family, does it seem great and real? We love it and we grow. But even then, it doesn't really change us. There's lots of things going on in our lives, and we take them all on. We love them all. With a kind of jump in with both feet to everything that's going. But then we do more and more things, and life and work and the desire for more, or we want a better house or a better car, or we're worrying about stuff, or we're full of stress. All these things, all these separate things grow, and they crush our faith, because our faith is just one of many things. And you can't do everything, can you? You can't do everything. So some things have got to give. So I can leave my faith, my church stuff out, because it doesn't really matter. It's just an optional extra. We're not so keen on it anyway. It just kind of falters, and then it fades, and then it's gone. Choked up by all the other things that we face in life. I mean, for Jesus, this is a pretty negative story, isn't it? I mean, he could have had a nicer one, do you think? But that's what it's like, isn't it? And those of us that have had a faith for a long time know these different things that you go through, the challenges and the draw. But there is another way. It's not the whole story, because we can do more. We can grow and be deeply rooted in our faith, and we can bear fruit 30, 60, 100-fold just by accepting the message. Read it for yourself. Unusually, for the Gospels, Jesus' explanation is given for this parable. So if you read Mark chapter 4, you'll see what Jesus had to say about it as well. Normally, we're just told the story and then left to work it out. Much like this, actually. Jesus continued, does anyone ever bring in a lamp and put it under a bowl or under a bed? Don't they put it on a lampstand? Whatever's hidden away will be brought out into the open, and whatever's covered up will be uncovered. Listen then, if you have ears. He also said to them, pay attention to what you hear. The same rules you use to judge others will be used by God to judge you, but with even greater severity. Those who have something will be given more, and those who have nothing will have taken away from them even the little that they have. Jesus went on to say, the kingdom of God's like this. Someone scatters seed about in their field. They sleep at night and they're up and about during the day, and all the while the seeds are sprouting and growing. Yet they don't know how it happens. The soil itself makes the plants grow and bear fruit. First the tender stalk appears, then the ear, and finally the ear full of corn. And when the corn's ripe, they start cutting it with a sickle because harvest time has come. And what should we say the kingdom of God is like? Asked Jesus. What parable could explain it? It's like this. Someone takes a mustard seed, the smallest seed in the world, and plants it in the ground. And after a while it grows up and becomes the biggest of all plants. It puts out such large branches that the birds come and make their nests in its shade. Jesus preached his message to the people using many parables like these. He told them as much as they could understand. He would not speak to them without using parables. And when he was alone with his disciples, he'd explain everything to them. So listen then, if you have ears, and read Mark chapter 4. God bless. See you next time.